welcome to the first ever video edition of The Craic. For those of you who don't know, this show actually launched on this feed 2 years ago. We went away, we built a cult following in Europe, and now we're back. What a time to be alive. I'm Petesy Carroll, of course. You may have seen me on the shows earlier this week with my good pals Ariel, Rick, GC, Mysterious Frank. And this is my own show now on Fridays. This is the go home show. I'm going to try and perk your interest before the big events of the weekend. And this weekend, of course, is the PFL show. A massive, massive card for the promotion. We're going to talk about it throughout the show. We have Dan Hardy. We have Paul Hughes is facing AJ McKee, the toughest test of his life. We're going to get to them very shortly. But how about this Uncrowned era? 3 episodes of the ArielHelwani show so far. I've been making brief appearances. What a pleasure it is to be with the boys. This legendary group of guys. Me just inserting myself in there. I hope I haven't annoyed you all too much. We had the boys in the back on Thursday. Then we had another Ariel show kind of when he did the Pereira thing. Absolutely fantastic. I've been absolutely loving it. It's a dream come true to be here. The boys are making me feel very, very welcome. As well as all these shows, of course, we have the .com element of it. And for any of you readers out there, you need to get over there. There's been some fantastic stuff put up this week. If you want a departure from PFL and all that stuff, go and read Elliot Worsel's article, Just Bleed. He goes and visits a bull ring, and it will give you a very visceral feeling as he goes through watching these bulls being felled. Absolutely brilliant writing. It's a long form piece, so stick on the kettle, have a cup of tea, coffee, whatever you're having yourself. Prime, I don't know. Do whatever you want. But it's a long form piece, very, very good. And if you want to zoom into the PFL stuff, we got endless amounts of stuff up there. I particularly enjoyed my great friend Chuck Mendenhall's piece about Francis Ngannou. Some brilliant paragraphs straight off the bat. An unbelievable writer, as we all know, one of the greatest of all time. It's called Francis Ngannou's Return Carries Heavyweight. Even a Mendenhall classic in the title. I wonder if Shaheen actually did that. Shaheen Al-Shadi, a great editor, but absolutely brilliant stuff. Now look, I may not have a swanky New York studio. I am broadcasting from the capital of Dublin, Blanchardstown, where I've lived my whole life. I may not even have a beautiful window behind me where you can see the day go by, as Ariel's so excited about. I've never heard of a window before. It's amazing getting all this education in my first week on this show. I might bring windows to Ireland. I may not have all that stuff, but I do have some fantastic interviews for you. I mean, let's start things off with my conversation with Dan Hardy. This guy knows more about MMA than anyone I know, to be honest. The way he talks about the sport, it's absolutely unbelievable. His technical breakdowns, which of course you've seen over the years on his own channel, on BT Sport back in the day, absolutely amazing. He gets really in depth here on Francis Ngannou, who he spent a lot of time this week. He talks about Eblin and Fabian's rematch. He's talking about Pacheco Cyborg. And he's talking about Paul Hughes, who we're going to hear from later on. Paul Hughes, the biggest free agent in the history of Irish MMA. A guy whose career has spanned back to 2017, I believe, when he made his debut for Bama and set the world on fire. One of the greatest Irish MMA debuts of all time. He's had a lot of bumps in the road. And we're hearing a lot of people say too much too soon. I have an article coming out on Uncrowned about this later on in the week, so I won't get into it too much. But I put that question to Dan. Like, this guy is the head of talent. Like, how did he feel about Paul Hughes being rushed into this situation after one fight against Bobby King? It's a massive step up for him. Look, let's get over to Dan. He does a great job as always, and it was a pleasure to speak to him. You might know him as the head of fighter operations or the colour commentator for PFL. I know him as UK MMA legend, Mr. Dan Hardy, and he's joining me for my first ever video show on the Uncrowned Network. Dan, I mean, what a pleasure. This is the only way I could properly do this, have a legend on. You put me over to the crowd. Thank you so much.
Man, it's exciting times, man. New show. Always good to talk to you though, my friend, as always.
Man, what an event this is you guys have coming up this weekend. First of all, where are you in New York still? Because I know Veronica's training in New York. Are you there now?
I just got to Riyadh today. I flew in. I got here 5 hours ago. So I've been to the FIFA World Cup bid for Saudi Arabia. Me and Francis had a wander around their museum, and they showed us all these new amazing arenas they're going to build. It's going to be a crazy 10 years for Saudi Arabia. Let me tell you that.
Well, that's a great place to start. Well, what kind of mood was Francis in today? Obviously saw him on Ariel's show on Monday. I think he's in great spirits. He's in a great mindset considering everything that's gone on over the last year. How did you find him today?
He looks, I mean, he looks physically, he looks very good. He looks very, very strong. He looks very svelte as well, something that stood out to me. I remember seeing him, especially at the press conference for the last couple of boxing matches he's had. And I remember thinking to myself, he looks really big and heavy. Whereas this time around, he looks like he's leaned out a little bit more. It looks like he's going to be faster. So I think he's fully expecting a really tough test. And I think he knows he might need 25 minutes. So he looks like he's got himself in incredible condition. He was very quiet today. He was just kind of taking it all in, but you can tell he's right in the middle of fight week and he's just kind of, battling those emotions. It's hard to imagine that someone as big and terrifying as Francis Ngannou would get anxious, but when you've got someone that's bigger and taller standing in front of you, it makes sense, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Tell me, Dan, this seems a gargantuan event. Like, and we'll go through some of the standout fights on the card. But really, how big is this for PFL? You've got your guy, and Ngannou was the big sign. He's the big headline, and now here he is having his first fight at this massive event. How big is this for PFL?
This is massive for us. I mean, it will be the biggest event that we've done, and it's going to keep us rolling into many more big events as well. But this one certainly does stand head and shoulders above the rest. I mean, I went straight from the airport to the arena, and all the way down the freeway on either side, there's just banners. It's Henan Henan Francis, brace for impact, Battle of the Giants. It's everywhere. It honestly, it just no matter where you are in the city, you can see at least one of these two heavyweights. And I mean, that's exciting because it really feels like it just takes over the whole of Riyadh. It's there's a lot of talk about it. There's media everywhere. This feels like a very, very big event. And it wouldn't be the same if it was just that main event, right? As you said, I mean, we've got a load of fights all the way down the card that, really are going to draw a lot of attention. So I'm just excited for us to be doing a real big event like this. And I know it's going to set us up for a big 2025.
Look, you guys have done massive events. I was at the Echo Arena for Baki and Doumbé, and it had a lasting impression on me. I've talked to French people about how I've talked to you about it too. Like, I don't think the English speaking world understand what's happening there, what Doumbé means to these people, what you guys have in terms of a star with Doumbé. But Francis is different gravy, right? Like, this is your first time working directly with Francis for a fight week that he's competing on at least. What does he add?
He's got this presence that I can't think of anybody else that maybe Brock Lesnar. He might be the only other person that I can think of that's got the same kind of terrifying presence. I stood in a lift once with Brock Lesnar. I mean, I'd squeezed in the corner of the lift with him in it. And he's got there's just kind of a heavy presence about him. And Francis is the same. There's something quite regal about him. And I don't know whether that's the old the marketing from the Tyson Fury when he was sitting in his throne with the crown on and stuff, but he just carries that kind of royalty, energy so well. And everybody, as soon as he walks in the room, as you can imagine, he draws everyone's attention. And there's a lot of people expecting to see him. So there's a lot of people looking out for him this week. I mean, the media just at this FIFA thing that we went to, like they were surrounding him. It was wild. He's a special athlete. And I think obviously, he's got a very tough test, but if he comes through it with flying colours this weekend, I think everyone's going to be back on the Francis train. We just can't look past Henan though, because we might see the birth of a new heavyweight superstar this weekend as well.
I like how he's speaking about Henan. When he was on with Ariel yesterday, like he seems to have a very in-depth knowledge of this guy. This isn't a guy who's earned his money in boxing and is just showing up and I'll come here, I'll just throw out the right hand and we'll see what happens. Like I feel like this is a guy who's doing a lot of homework on Henan. He's a guy that respects his position with PFL. I'm sure you've heard him talking about him too, but does that kind of give you confidence that this fight is going to deliver as well when you have Ngannou seemingly so honed in on this guy?
Yeah, I mean, the fact that Francis is so focused in on him really shows me how much of a special fight this is going to be. Like if Francis came in, showed up, and was kind of relaxed, and felt like he was going to run through Fajeda, then first of all, I would think that he's underestimating Henan, which is not going to work out well for him. And second of all, he's not going to rise to the occasion that is required for a fight like Henan Fajeda. But both of these guys this week, they've got the same kind of quiet, respectful, slightly anxious, not exactly sure what's going to happen energy about them, like we all do around heavyweight fights. And I think they both know that they could be asleep on the canvas within the first minute of the fight, which is what makes this so terrifying. We've seen what Henan Fajeda can do. We saw it against Ryan Bader, especially in his last couple of fights. Since he's been at ATT, he looks so much more well-rounded. He's not got that nervousness of getting taken down and controlled on the floor anymore because he knows he can defend those takedowns. And the other thing as well that we saw it in the Goltsov fight. We saw it in the fight with Bader as well for as long as that lasted, waiting for his opponent to throw first, right? Stand like tempting them, feinting them, and then moving away and feinting and moving away because he wants them to commit first. And that's danger for Francis because he knows he can punch, so he knows that if he lands, he's going to do damage, which means he's going to be more happy to throw those punches. And second of all, the anxiety of being out there for a couple of being out for a couple of years, he's gonna, you know, it might make him a little bit agitated. It might make him go first, then he's going to run onto a counter. Like he's got to do his research. He's got to know what he's up against here. He's not only up against Henan Fajeda, he's up against American top team, Conan Silveira in the corner. He's got great minds around him as well. I think this is going to be a really, really special heavyweight fight. And I think both of these guys know it going into this week.
You can speak to this as a legendary fighter yourself. A lot has happened with Francis. It's undeniable, like the AJ knockout in March, and then this tragic loss of his son. As a guy who is a fighter himself, who has been around fighters his whole life, what kind of mentality do you think these series of things that have happened to him, what kind of mentality will this forge within Francis for this fight week?
I mean, honestly, I can't even begin to imagine what he's been through. I mean, getting knocked out's one thing. I've been knocked out live on TV. It wasn't quite as big of a an event as Francis, but still a lot of people saw it, and that's one of those things that you just have to kind of like put to the back of your head and go, well, it's a part of combat sports, right? If you land enough knockout punches, eventually someone's going to catch you with one. So he can put that to bed. The personal stuff though, losing his son, I don't know how you compartmentalize that, if you can in some way manage it at the same time as managing the pressure from the fight. Again, that's something that would require a much stronger person than me, and I think Francis is that guy. um but ultimately I think the focus of having a competition, having a fight, and the fact that it's mixed martial arts, it's back to what he's familiar with. And I also think that, and there's no way that you could distract yourself, but not sitting around every day, you know, just kind of, I don't really know how you would describe it. Just kind of falling into an abyss is how I would imagine it would feel for him. To be able to get up and go to the gym and feel like you've got a purpose, no matter what that is, I think that's healthy for him. At the PFL press conference we had in DC the other week, he said that he didn't feel like he got the chance to fight for his son, so this might be the opportunity. And he got emotional. I get emotional thinking about it when he said when I think about it. But I just think that the focus of having competition is going to be really, really beneficial for him. And a focused Francis Ngannou is, I mean, he's terrifying enough as it is. But for him to be single-minded in his need to defeat this individual in front of him, I would not like to be Henan Fajeda this week.
Absolutely. Ariel had both Francis and a good mate of yours, Tom Aspinall, on the show yesterday. And apologies for the awkward situation I'm about to put you in, but both of those guys, and rightfully so, believe they are the best heavyweight in the world. Where do you weigh in on this, Dan?
It's a great question, and I really think that look, we're gonna find the best heavyweight in the PFL this weekend, and then on November 16th, we're gonna find the best heavyweight in the UFC. I'm hoping, love Stipe. I want to see Jones versus Aspinall. That's where I'm not going to get the answer who the best heavyweight in the UFC is if I see John Jones fight Stipe Miocic. I don't know whether it's one of those guys, but I'm pretty sure that Tom Aspinall's in that conversation. Now, whether Tom's good enough right now, whether he's got the experience to be able to beat Francis, that's a different question entirely. And same goes with Henan Fajeda. I would put either of these guys in that main event on November 16th at Madison Square Garden. I would feel that Francis and Henan both have a good chance against any three of those UFC heavyweights. So that really is the interesting conversation. As you know, I'm a big fan of Jones as well as well, I'm a big fan of all of them. I'm an MMA fan, but look, Tom is the future of the heavyweight division. He may not be the president of the heavyweight division, and if it's not John Jones, then I think it may well be Francis Ngannou. But it's the heavyweight division. It's so difficult to pick these guys apart and make a real strong case for, yeah, this guy's going to win 9 times out of 10 because it just doesn't happen like that at heavyweight, does it? Like, even if Francis and Henan fought 5 times this weekend, we're going to get 5 different results. Ultimately, what I want to see is Tom Aspinall with the legitimate UFC belt around his waist, and then the UFC be open to a super fight between that heavyweight champ and our heavyweight champ, whoever it is. And I know that's a long shot, but Turki Al Sheikh's making some moves with the boxing world, so he might be able to do it with mixed martial arts too. We can keep our fingers crossed.
I truly believe that. I'm getting a lot of shit on the internet, Dan, because I keep on saying that I think this is a possibility, and Dana hasn't exactly shrugged it off either. Like, he's kind of saying, "Well, let's see what happens here." Speaking of Dana, real competition, it oozes a certain kind of, attitude from both sides, and I think we really saw it kind of crank up last weekend. We saw the PFL promo come out that rattled a few people over at the UFC, obviously featuring Kayla Harrison, and Dana's asked about this at the press conference. I don't know if you saw this, um, and he had this to say. I'll read you the quote. I think when you're losing as much money as they are, effing go for it. Effing throw the kitchen sink at it. Don Davis just came out recently and said, we're going to spend more money than they did in the Sphere. That sounds effing brilliant. How many tickets are you going to sell? They're not very bright. It's all fair. Knock yourself out. They're drowning. Drowning. They suck. They're not going to do what they do. So I guess you would just keep trying anything you can to make something stick. All good. He went on to say that, it's a different feeling for Kayla now that she's in the UFC, having been rotting away at the PFL for so many years. Tell me, what is your reaction to that? And is it a positive one to kind of create this kind of vitriol between the two promotions?
I don't mind it, to be honest. I mean, look, I'm kind of, especially over the last sort of 12 months, I've kind of taken a bit of a back step from all of it. And I appreciate who Dana is and what Dana does, as well as, I appreciate Don and what Don Davis does for the PFL. Um, it's it's always interesting watching promoters like answer questions like that because it's got to be spun in one direction. Like, you're never ever going to get a clear, objective answer to any of those questions because it's always got to have the promotion in the sidelines. The reality is, like, this is the promotional game. If you've got a commodity that you can promote, then you're going to do it however you can. Like, and there was also a time when, and if it wasn't for the Ultimate Fighter, the UFC would have continued losing money, right? Not all promotions hit the ground running and make handfuls of cash. Sometimes you've got to speculate to accumulate. And what's happening here in Riyadh is that we've got the backing of the Ministry of Sport. They want these heavyweights in Riyadh. They want more fights next year in Riyadh. They want the PFL, they want Bellator to come back. I'm sure they want the UFC to come over here as well and be doing events. Like, this is just the chatter between the promotions. I'm most interested right now in the fighters, and I'll always give you my objective opinion of who I think is the most capable in those divisions, regardless of the promotion. PFL and Bellator have got some fantastic fighters. There's no doubt that the majority of the world class, the elites are in the UFC right now. But as they start moving over, the likes of Francis coming over to PFL, that starts to change things a little bit. And it also changes things a little bit when Kayla Harrison goes over because she's going to be the UFC champ very soon. And that shines another light on the PFL, on the fact that we've got Larissa Pacheco, who handed Kayla a loss, and we've got Cyborg, and who knows what's going to happen with that fight this weekend. Like, what's happening right now is that we've got stakes in a few of these divisions that we can make a real argument that we've got the best fighter on the planet. And what I've noticed about Dana, with all due respect, the longer his reply gets, the more he's kind of anxious about what's going on. That means he's paying attention because he's digging into the back of the business and he's trying to figure out what he's up against. And we're moving and shaking right now, and there's a few dollar bills falling off either side of the cart as we go, but that's a part of growing a promotion, right? You just got to keep the wheels moving forward and keep making the fights that people want to see.
I love everything you said there, and I love the way this event has been put together because we talked about Ngannou. There's tremendous risk on this card, and I think that's PFL putting their chins out as if to say, "Look, we're here. We're going to be putting on big events." We talked about Ngannou, but then you have Paul Hughes, a guy who's fought one time in this promotion, facing AJ McKee. Like this is one of the best guys in the world, without a doubt. His ground game is insane. Um, Tell me, as a guy who's dealing with these fighters, and I know Paul myself, so I'm pretty sure I know how this conversation went. But how do you decide that right after one fight, we're ready to put you into this situation? What convinced you, Dan, that he was ready for a situation like this?
Look, I'll be honest. I'm still not convinced, right? That's why we're all going to be tuning in this weekend to see if he's ready for AJ McKee. Like we have a fighter ops team, and these matchups we discussed these matchups, and when that first came up, I was like, man, that's a big jump up for Paul Hughes, and I know full well that Paul wants to fight. I remember chatting with him outside Ariel's show a few weeks ago, and he was saying, "I've got a list of fighters, and there were names like Nurmagomedov on that list that he wants to fight. He wants the big names." So it doesn't surprise me that he jumped at this opportunity. Like me and my calculated head, I'm going, well, maybe he has one or two more and then an AJ McKee because then it's not quite as big of a jump. But even if Paul wins two or three, four more fights, it's still a big jump to fight AJ McKee
Yeah,
even then. But you've got to make hay while the sun's shining, right? At the moment, the opportunity is right in front of Paul Hughes. If he beats AJ McKee, I mean, he puts himself right at the top of this division, right in conversation to fight anybody he wants. And these opportunities, they don't always come around. They do in the PFL, funnily enough. Like you look at Jesus Pineda, right? We got Jesus Pineda, Gabriel Braga in the championship last year. Most people thought it was going to be a Loughnane, a Bubba Jenkins, a
that's right.
Chris Wade, one of the familiar faces, but it was the two young prospects that blasted everyone out of the water. Like sometimes you see an opportunity like this and you've got to grab it with both hands. And if you can make something with it, then you can change your career overnight. I mean, Paul Hughes has changed his career, changed his life overnight just by signing with PFL. If he wins this fight, that's a game changer. And look, and if he doesn't, then he gets back into the gym and he learns from it and he goes back to work. He's not a person that's going to be deterred, not slowed down, not in any way. You know the man's confidence. But I love the fact that he's stepping into this fight, and I do know it's a big risk fight for him. But I also feel like if anyone's going to be able to do it, it's going to be Paul Hughes.
Absolutely. Like it's brilliant to see as well. I think that, he's talked about this for so long. You're kind of like, will PFL want to do something like that? So it did take balls, I think, from PFL as well to make a fight like that. So I commend them for this. Um, Eblen v Fabian, I think this is floating under the radar so much. That first fight was absolutely mental. Like, I mean, Eblen gets cut to the point where you think, this is going to be stopped midway through this round. Fabian, I thought at the time, was in control of the fight. Eblen comes out and knocks him out. Then a fight burst, like a verbal confrontation bursts out between Leon Edwards and Johnny Eblen. It was crazy in the arena. People were screaming, shouting. I couldn't even see what had happened. So I'm trying to look at this at the monitor. Meanwhile, all this drama unfolds. I'm getting text messages. Eblen spat on Fabian. Of course he didn't, but it was just so dramatic. It was all caught up in this chaotic scene. Um, I'm really interested in this fight. Not only did I learn something from Eblen in that fight in terms of like this guy can just pull something from this wild reserve he has, and we saw it against Kasanganay as well, right? Like he was down and he comes back and he does it. But Fabian had a lot of success too, and Fabian is that guy that we've been looking at for the guts of a decade, going, this guy is going to be able to rumble with the best in the world. He's getting a second crack at Eblen here. I'm really compelled by this. Are you feeling the same way?
Yeah, I am. I mean, I watched that. I watched their first fight a few times on the plane. I've been chopping it down to try and pull some clips out of it to tell us straight for you guys. Um, it was a fascinating fight. The thing is, you know what you're going to get from Eblen, right? He's going to swarm you and he's going to throw big overhands and he's going to try and take you down. And what Fabian did for the first couple of rounds is he managed the takedown defense really well, right? He was getting Eblen's head to the inside, he was breaking his posture, he was stuffing him up against the fence, turning himself off and then getting back out to space. But the difference between Eblen before the cut and afterwards was night and day. Before the cut, he was punching into a takedown and wrestling for a bit, and then going back, punching into a takedown, wrestling for a bit. This time around, he did the same dip with the big overhand right, but he doubled up with the right hand. And it was like Fabian, he had a counter knee for the first one, brought him back up into range. And then as Fabian was dropping into like a check right hook, he just ate a big one on the chin. And I talk about this a lot, especially with Veronica going into this fight that she's got coming up. I talk about intention in MMA. Intention can win the day a lot of the time. And that cut across Eblen's face was, as you said, it was bad enough that most doctors would have stopped it. Most cut people wouldn't have been able to stop the bleeding between rounds. So when Eblen starts that next round and he's like, I've probably got half a round to make something happen here. That was a championship mentality that he came out with, like doubling the right hand up, landed a big right hook on the chin, followed it up, looked incredibly strong, came through with a big cut, and he's rematching Fabian straight away after. I feel like they're going to pick up where they left off. I feel like it's going to be very, very competitive. But Fabian can't be lazy up against the fence again because he can get knocked out just the same.
Absolutely. I've got one more. Come here. Thank you so much for this, Dan. It's absolutely amazing to pick that wonderful mind of yours. It's always a pleasure. Um, this kid, Ibragimov, is that how you say his name? Ibragimov.
Yeah,
Um,
Bragimo.
he has two brothers. Is this correct? He has two brothers that play for the Manchester United Academy. Now, the Manchester United Academy, famous all over the world. They are picking like the 0.01% of athletes to go to this academy. And then you've got a brother of theirs competing in MMA. He's undefeated and he's with the PFL. I mean, this is a hell of a story, Dan. Like I can see all the mainstream papers picking up on this guy straight away. I've been on his Instagram page, watching him sitting in the dugouts, watching his brothers playing. Absolutely incredible story. But can you speak to like what kind of athlete this man is to come from this genetic pool that's creating two Manchester United Academy players?
Well, yeah, I mean, first of all, I'm just glad that he chose mixed martial arts instead of football because there's
Yeah.
enough football players. We need some more Ibras in MMA. Honestly, I mean, the rumblings about this kid coming out of the gyms in Manchester, people talking about how dominant he is on the floor. Once he gets a hold of you, nothing you can do about it. And then you meet him, and he's got this very kind of chilled, matter of fact aura about him. He's like, "Well, I'm just gonna take you down and choke you." Like there's nothing you can do about it. And he knows it. Like who does that to Josh Reed, right? I brought Josh Reed in for that fight because I'm thinking to myself, I've seen him go through absolute scraps on Cage Warriors. I know how deep his ground game is. I know how well prepared he is. I just didn't expect the fight to be so one-sided. And then as soon as that fight was over, like we're now looking at other places we can put Ibra because we want to keep him on PFL Europe, but they want him in Riyadh and they want him in the US. And like immediately people started to demand him to be on different cards around the world. So it made sense to put him on this one. And this kid he's fighting, Nacho Campos, he's a bit of a wild man. He's a bit of a lunatic. I was looking at him last year to sign him, and this
Undefeated,
match,
right?
yeah, and undefeated, but a risk taker, like a real risk taker. Like he's not going to be bothered about taking a shot and potentially ending up on the floor because he cannot hold still for a second. So if Ibra is able to take him down and dominate him like he did Josh Reed, then I mean, I'd be very, very surprised. Ibra is incredibly good, but Nacho's a lunatic, and that's going to keep this fight moving.
Well, that's another one we can look forward to now, Dan. Thank you so much. All this going on in your life. I'm sure, like, is there a part of you that's like, why does this have to happen now? This fight's coming up for Veronica. We're all the way over there. I know how involved you are. Is it tough to take a break this close to that fight and come over here and do this, or is it all in a day's work now for Dan Hardy?
It is for me, to be honest. It's difficult. I mean, we flew out to New York last week, so she's in New York right now. She's at Henzo's preparing, and we've got we've got a great team of people out there helping us. Sean Santella and Martin Montalvo, they're the corner team. So reality is she's getting a break from me this week as opposed to the other way around. Like she doesn't have to put up with me for a week in training camp, which is a blessing in disguise because I don't stop talking about the fight. I'm on it all the time. So I'm going to let her focus, be in her own head for a few days. I'll get these fights done, get these awesome fights in the record books, and then I'll be back to New York ready to finish off training camp, and then we'll be at MSG, baby, picking up another victory.
I can't wait to see it. Her run, her resurgence has been absolutely unbelievable. I can't wait for this card. Dan, no one sets it up better than you. Thank you so much for coming on the show, mate.
Mate, always a pleasure, and congratulations on the new show. I'm an honored guest.
Thank you so much, man. All the best. What a man. What a great preview. I'm frothing at the mouth for this card after speaking to Dan Hardy. And look, I love the honesty too. He knows that PFL offered considerably more for Paul Hughes when he became a free agent. The UFC were at the table. PFL were at the table. And in the end, Paul Hughes found the PFL offer too good to turn down. And you can understand that, certainly. I guess the one thing that I think people don't know about Paul Hughes is how far this guy has come. At one stage, I mentioned the spectacular debut very early on in his career, but immediately after that, he broke his left hand. When he was nearly recovered, he was going to fight again against Patrick Wickstead, and he broke his right hand. He subsequently broke the right hand 2 more times, and he was told he would never fight again. From there, he got back on the horse after 2 years on the sidelines, after this, again, amazing debut, one of the greatest in the history of Irish MMA. He gets back on the horse and just starts cleaning shop. I think he had 3 finishes in the space of 6 months, and that was with like 2 withdrawals as well during that period. Like, he was going after this stuff with furious pace. He ends up in the Cage Warriors promotion. He loses a very close split decision to Jordan Vucenic, and this was during the pandemic, and the Irish fans were going crazy, absolutely insane about it. They thought he'd been robbed. I personally scored it for Hughes. It was a very close fight. He has to go back to the drawing board, gets himself back to an interim title situation with Morgan Charrier, and then he goes on to avenge the loss to Jordan Vucenic. Vucenic and Charrier are in the UFC. This guy has beaten the both of them. He's an incredible talent. For a long time in Ireland, there was a debate, like, who is the best active fighter from the island now, beyond the McGregor era? Is it Ian Garry, who has done phenomenal things, obviously, at welterweight? He's knocking on the door of a title shot. I don't know what's going on. I heard him talking earlier in the week about Colby Covington turning down a shot. Meanwhile, a few days before, there was reports of a Sean Brady fight being confirmed. Of course, GC has talked to his sources and he has said that it's a load of bollocks, so we can firmly sweep that one under the rug. But Paul Hughes, an incredibly interesting character. Have a listen to him here. He is not faking this. Ever since I met this guy, he has been one of the most confident people I've ever met. And if you think about all of that stuff that happened to him on the way to getting to this point, fighting AJ McKee, it's fortified him. He's an incredible mind. And I know a lot of you people don't know about him now, but who knows? If he pulls off the upset on Saturday, he is going to be some hot shit. Here is Paul Hughes. Enjoy. Paul, it's been a long time since I talked to you. The last time I was up here in Belfast was before your debut with the PFL, which we know went very well. Or should we say Bellator? I don't know which one we say. But tell me this. First impressions with the promotion, before we get into the massive fight that is AJ McKee in Saudi Arabia. What was that first week like?
It was fantastic. I got treated like a star. You know, I kind of feel like, in a way, they built the show around myself. And the reason I feel that way is because of the extra that they were doing for me in terms of the extra content. We were going out to the local Gaelic pitch, we were doing all that extra stuff. And then small things such as, you know, after we weighed in, we'd done the ceremonials, the producer took me to the side and he was like, right, what way do you want your walkout? And I'm just like, this is what I want, you know, because obviously I'm kind of known for my walkouts at this point. So we got it down to a T the day before. But that's just small things like that kind of were very cool. And then just the week in general, and then obviously how the fight went and how the broadcast, the production and all. Like I think the production for these Bellator Champion Series is fantastic. Dan Hardy, Adam Smith, Jimmy Smith on there. I think it's great. So very, very happy with it.
It was kind of perfect in that I was down here stirring up shit as I usually do, and I was talking about the unfollowing from McGregor, and then suddenly you have this moment right between you and McGregor, which is kind of looks like a passing of the torch moment. Like this is the moment that every Irish fighter dreams of having. The guy who inspired you to do this is there after you've made a very emphatic debut win, and he's talking about how great you are.
Mm-hmm.
Like I know you've probably talked about this 1,000 times, but like what would have 18-year-old Paul Hughes, who's trying to find his footing in this game, a guy who hasn't taken on the world like you're about to do, like what would have he thought of that situation? Like that's a dream thing.
Yeah, it really is surreal. It's really surreal. In fact, I done like a breakdown video last week on my YouTube, like kind of watching through the debut and then kind of taking a seat back again and watching it and seeing the interaction then with McGregor. I was like, this is crazy. Like as you talked about, like imagine 18-year-old, 19-year-old Paul, like 19-year-old Paul when he made his professional debut. Whenever, like, of course, Conor was one of the people that inspired me, and as I said in the octagon, showed us it was possible. So to have that moment, which I didn't know was going to happen either, in the 3 Arena co-main event on the world stage, to have him down there clapping, shouting big news, to have a moment with him after, it was surreal, and it's definitely something that I'll take to the grave with me for sure.
Did you think that was going to be awkward at all, like because of the situation? Like remember, you're like, I don't really know where I stand. Like that must have made it even better, right? Like when you're kind of in the unknown and you're like, holy shit, it's a really nice endorsement I'm getting actually.
That wasn't a thought in my mind, to be honest. I didn't play too much into that. It was more you guys. It was more you guys playing into that. I didn't really take it personally at all. I think it's kind of a petty thing to think you unfollowed me. I didn't even know until other people told me, and I didn't care. But
for the record, I didn't tell you. I didn't come after. I did not tell Paul Hughes that he'd been unfollowed.
But nah, it was as I say, I didn't know that he was going to be down cage side. I seen him in the warm-up room before because he was with Sinead Kavanagh, and he just came in, said hello, wished me the best of luck. But the fact that, after I'd got my hand raised and was doing the interview with Dan, he was just down there cage side, and Dan was like, how does it feel having Conor McGregor here cheering you on? And then I looked down and he was like, go on, big news like that. So yeah, it was cool.
We're doing a big written piece on you for Uncrowned. Massive fight, and there's going to be a lot of people seeing Paul Hughes for the first time and maybe didn't tune into that Dublin event, and people in America who don't understand everything you've been through to get to this moment. But one of the things I found out from speaking to your mother this week, who's a saint, just such a lovely person, and she gave me a lot of time, was you were quite a good GAA player for your local team, to the point where as you're trying to get into this MMA thing and you start having a bigger interest in that, the manager knocks on your door and asks you to play one of the most important matches of the season. I mean, I don't think people from outside of Ireland will understand the gravity of this, like what GAA clubs mean to their community.
Everything.
But I'd say that was an extremely tough thing for you to do back in the day, to be like, I'm leaving the sport that is in fact our national identity to do this sport you've never heard of. Yeah,
it's crazy. I often say it, that I was just as obsessed with Gaelic and hurling, more so Gaelic, than I am with MMA now, and it actually is the truth. Like, I've always been a competitor. I've always just loved to compete, and GAA was my life until I found MMA at 15 years old. I mean, it just consumed my whole being, just like MMA does now. So that was everything to me, so it's kind of funny, like reminiscing on that, talking to my mum about it the other day, because I forgot about this moment where we had a big game and I hadn't been training really at all, because I had a fight coming up, and I think it was a championship game. Yourself, even under 16 level, like when it doesn't matter. Like, even you think, oh, they're 16-year-olds. This is everything to the community. And I remember the manager asked me to play, and I was like, right, I'll come down, but don't start me or anything like that. And then he went to put me on early in the game, and I was like, you need to put these other lads on first before you put me on, because they've been training all year. And I refused to go on. And if you knew who I was talking about, who the manager was, he was the most respected guy in the entire club, and you know how it is in GAA clubs, like you don't say no to this person. And I was just like, you need to put these other boys on here before you put me on. And I think, and as I say, I forgot about this until the other day, and I was talking to my mum about it, and I think that's actually, now looking back, was a moment of like huge character change, of like I went from one world of GAA into the MMA world, and the personal development that I had to just kind of go, this is what I want. You know, the person that I was becoming, chasing this new dream, having to, I guess, improve myself, become the best version of myself. I think that was kind of like a moment of like, nah, I'm on this new chapter now. I'm not on this like GAA, like everything focused on your small town kind of, I don't want to say small town mentality, that's not the case, but just like that was everything. And then that was when I kind of, I guess, passed the torch onto the new world, you know, into the MMA world.
Your dreams kind of grew beyond your parish. You know, like, you know, and I think in Ireland, a lot of people live absolutely brilliant lives through their involvement in these parishes, and massive opportunities come to them. But obviously, you went down this other road, and it's taken you a bit longer. Say, like, guys are playing county football and like 19, 20. It's taken you a bit longer to get to this moment, which it does in this sport. But tell me about the AJ fight, because I've been telling you guys all day, that segment you did in London where you're on video call with AJ, the look on your face, as soon as I saw that, I was like, oh, this is like, he is so happy with this situation. Like the cat who got the cream is how I would describe you. I know you had to, again, keep this under wraps for so long, which is becoming, you know, a theme in your PFL career. But how did this come together, and tell me how excited you were when they offered you this? Because I know from when you signed with this promotion, you were like, I want the best guys immediately.
Yeah. In a way, I kind of manifested this, not to sound all woo-woo at all, but I did kind of manifest this big opportunity, this big bout. If I hadn't have been going on, for example, Ariel's show and saying, Ariel, I'm here to fight the best now. You know, whenever I got signed, I was like, give me this name, give me Pitbull, give me whoever. I was asking for the big names. And if I hadn't been going out there and saying that, I want to fight the best, I'm ready for the best, I'm the best in the world, they probably wouldn't have came knocking, because they probably would have thought, oh, well, maybe we'll just keep building this guy because he's a good prospect. I was the one going out and saying, I want the best guys, I want the highest pressure fights, I want the best fights for the fans. And then it just so happened that this pay-per-view was coming up towards the end of the year. I was free, AJ was free, and it got done.
How quickly did it get to AJ though? Like, I mean, this, we do a segment on my show, the Trident of Knowledge we call it, with Andy Stevenson and Donna Corby. And the first time when you had signed for PFL, Donna Corby said AJ McKee, and me and Andy were like, what? Like, why would you do that straight away? But here we are, just one fight in, and the first fight was quite short notice as well. How did that come about? Like, was there much deliberation, or is he like the first guy they offered you for this guy?
None at all. I was in Spain at the time. My sister was getting married, and I woke up one day hungover, and I got a text from Tim saying, AJ McKee, October 19th. Yes, get it done. That was it. Was done. Literally that week.
For a long time, AJ is the guy, like, as in the guy people point to when they say talent outside the UFC. Like, who are your top 5 guys outside the UFC? AJ's usually on that list. That's the way a lot of people feel about you in the European scene, right? Like, people are saying, like, this is the best guy we have outside of the UFC right now in your division, which was featherweight, now lightweight. But tell me how you've seen AJ over the years. Like, you know, you consume a lot of MMA, you watch a lot of this sport. You're completely addicted to it. What is your opinion of him? Look, AJ's been there, done it for a long time. He's fought very, very good fighters. He's won the belt. He's won his millions. He's the guy. Like, you know, AJ is the guy when it comes to Bellator and now PFL. His PFL debut was successful. This guy is, I mean, he had a very, very close decision loss, but he could be 23-0 right now. You know, he's 22-1, he's going to be 22-2, but this guy is dangerous, you know, and I've studied him for a long time because generally I'm watching everything anyway, but I remember, must have been 4 or 5 years ago, AJ was being talked about as being like one of the best in the world, you know, and here we are. He still hasn't lost, barely. Yeah. You know, he's still up there, so this is what gets me excited, you know, this opportunity now to prove myself. I've been saying for so long, about a year now, I've been saying I'm the best in the world, I'm the best in the world, and I remember people just being like, what is he on about? Like,
my first lightweight fight on Cage Warriors, which will be about a year ago, came out of the cage shouting, I'm the best in the world, I'm the best in the world. People are gonna be like, what is this kid talking about? Like, but now I've put myself now in this position where now is my first chance to prove it to everybody, and that's what I'm gonna do.
You're not gonna like this, but when this was announced, do you know what I heard a lot of? Too much, too soon.
Too much, yeah.
What do you think of that sentiment?
All the receipts, I have them all. But look, I get why people say that, because on paper you put our records together. Yes, although I have had incredible experience in Cage Warriors and I've fought really, really good guys, 5-rounders, high pressure, which is great experience. You put our 2 records together and it does look like too much too soon. You know, that's the reality of it. But as I say, there's a reason why I've been saying it. There's a reason, as we talked about, you were mentioning about the broadcast, and I'm kind of like, what did you say? The
cat who got the cream.
The cat who got the cream. That's a quiet confidence, you know. And AJ hasn't fought the young guy coming up before. He was always that guy. He's been there and done it now. He's made a lot of money, beat the best guys. He's comfortable. He's 100% comfortable, and fair play to him. He deserves that because he's fought and beat basically everybody. But he's never been in this situation when he's fighting the young kid, the young hungry lion, as I said on the stream.
What do you think his reaction was to you? I found him quite puzzled by it. Like, you were, the picture you portrayed, and this is how you are, of course, but like, this might be his first time having a dialogue with you, and you're so calm, you're very obviously confident as well. AJ looks like he's just after putting down the PlayStation controller and jumping on this call, and he immediately is like, there's a situation where you're both trying to suss each other out, I felt. And you were kind of, well, here I am. And he was kind of like, well, what is this guy all about? Did you notice that, or was it just a mundane conversation for you?
He probably wasn't expecting it to go the way it went. And it's not like I was going in and just putting on this act and talking mad trash. It was the way that I was saying things. It was the confidence. That's what I think AJ hasn't seen before, is that young kid coming up that's like, I'm going to beat you. Like, I'm going to smash you, I'm going to knock you out within 2 rounds. I don't think anybody was talking like that to him because he's been so good for so long. But this is the time. This is my time.
Do you know what I thought when I thought about this quite a bit when people said to me, too much too soon. I thought about one of the greatest Irish MMA debuts we've ever saw was you in the SSE. And how excited we all were after that. Then the handbrakes, which, you know, stopped your career in its tracks for a very long time. And then I thought about the Cage Warriors situation, where for 2 years you had everybody saying, this guy is clearly the best in Europe, why isn't he signed to the biggest league? So when people say too much too soon to me about you, I say absolutely, it's the opposite. This guy is sprinting towards his goals. Any opportunity put in front of him, he wants to aggressively pursue it as much as he can. So that logic that, you know, you aren't ready for this situation is kind of crazy to me, knowing what you've gone through, you know? Yeah,
absolutely. I truly do feel like a young veteran, which, you know, I've only 12, 13 fights on my record, but the experience that I've garnered throughout that Cage Warriors tenure with the world title fights, with fighting great guys back to back to back, and having to do that, I truly feel unstoppable at this point. Like, the things that I have had to come through in my career, as we talked about, like the early handbrakes, 4 handbrakes in the space of 12 months, thought my career was over. You know, I had to build myself and I had to find something to get me out of that, to get me to where I am today. And the person that I've become today is because of this adversity. So I feel like when I was 20, 21, 22, I felt like I had conquered more adversity than most fighters do in their entire career. Like, I genuinely felt like that. I felt bulletproof, and I've carried from then, 20, 21, 22. That mindset has now just got even better, more obstacles, more callous in the mind, and then you have the big fight, and then you have a big step up, and then you have your Cage Warriors, and then you're going. I've seen so much. So at this point, like, I genuinely feel unbreakable. That's why you look at me and you see this calm confidence, like, because in a way, Petesy, like, in a way, I know something that people don't know yet. There's layers to my games that people haven't seen, and I think it all comes together here on Saturday night. I think and I know that I'm going to knock him out within 2 rounds, 100%. I have my prediction. We've shot a YouTube video before the fight, exactly what I think is going to happen, and this is what I foresee, and I'm going to have him out of there within 2 rounds, 100%.
This is all very exciting. I think the idea that this guy is the most prolific fighter you've ever faced, like an international name, like I'm not trying to take away from your previous opponents, but this is a different level of opponent, just in terms of notoriety. And what comes along with that is a lot of people going, oh, AJ always wins, I'm picking AJ. I think, as much as you won't admit to this, I think that will probably light a fire under your ass. I think you thrive on that. It's been a very long time since we've seen Paul Hughes announcing a matchup where you're like, oh, I don't know about this one for Paul. You know,
probably never.
Yeah.
I don't think in my career, especially professional career, because I was coming in as a good amateur, I've never been an underdog. So like, I'm carrying that with me. You know, this deep level of, I need to prove everyone wrong. You know, there really is, like, it's all the gain for me here next week. It's all the gain and it's all the lose for AJ. So I'm in a damn good position, like a very exciting position.
It's an interesting one too, because you're the guy. Like they broke the bank to get you here, and now you're in an underdog situation. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's a very kind of, it's a mixed bag of feelings you must be having now.
Yeah. Look, I mean, my feelings are the same. I feel like I'm the best in the world, and I came into this promotion saying, give me all the best guys now, and here we are. I mean, 6 months since I signed, maybe less, and here I am. I'm going to be in the biggest show of all, Francis Ngannou pay-per-view, main card, probably, other than the Francis fight, probably the most hyped fight of the night, because of the story, because it's the underdog, the young guy versus the guy who's barely been beat, the king of Bellator for so many years, the guy who just knocks people out for fun, chokes people out for fun. There's a story there, and you know, that story will be told on Saturday night, and as I say, 100% we'll have him out of there in 2 rounds.
Tell me what, like, you know, you're mentioning the Ngannou situation, that adds a completely different thing to it. Like, this is probably one of the biggest cards outside the UFC in a very, very long time. Like, this is something that the attention of the MMA world will be on this event all week next week. As you mentioned, a lot of good fights, and you got Eblen and Edwards on it as well. But I do agree with you. I think AJ and you, the fact that nobody kind of visualised you two together and now you suddenly are there, I think that's added a lot of intrigue to it. But do you recognise what the PFL are doing here, like with you, like by putting you on this card? I think they are showing you how much they see you as, like, you know, a pillar for this promotion moving forward. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, I definitely feel like they've given me great respect and even offering me this fight, you know, so I appreciate that. But it also is a potential passing of the torch as well, from old Bellator days into new PFL. Like, no doubt, like, AJ's been there, he's done it. He's not the biggest star in the world, with all due respect. He hasn't really transcended Bellator or PFL now. I think PFL know that I can be a big name around the world if they do it correctly, and I think this is what they're trying to do. I think this is them trying to do it correctly, give me the opportunity to prove myself, to beat the guy who's been the king of the promotion, to usher in a new era into the PFL. That's what I think potentially is what they're thinking. That's definitely what I was thinking whenever I signed to the PFL. I signed here thinking, I want this promotion to build me as their biggest star. I want to take this to a whole new level. And that's what I have the opportunity to do Saturday night.
In the rounds of Irish MMA, this is a massive fight. You think about the fights that have happened over the years. McGregor's nearly involved in every one of them. You have Sinead Kavanagh v Cyborg, you have Queally v Pitbull. You've had a few guys who had an opportunity to go on and fight some of the best guys in the world, but as far as I'm concerned, and as far as like other media members who were mentioned earlier, Andy and Dunn, are concerned, like, this would be the biggest non-Conor McGregor win in the history of Irish MMA. How do you see it? Like, do you think about situations like that? I know you're a guy who very much, like, considers himself, like, you know, you think about your legacy, but do you consider what this would mean to Irish MMA for you, a guy who was in the headlines for so long. Like, why isn't he here to go on and get one of the biggest wins in Irish MMA history outside of the UFC?
Yeah.
It would be pretty crazy.
It would be. It will be. I haven't thought about it too much, to be honest. I have seen media mention that. I've seen it on Twitter and all, and it did get me thinking about the magnitude of the bout. Yeah.
I think the conversation that was being had a lot around, I think it was about 2019, was who is the best Irish fighter, you know, on the scene right now. Back then, and I didn't include McGregor in this conversation back then because I was already so sure of you two, but it was Ian Garry and Paul Hughes. You have Ian Garry surging in the UFC right now. You have you about to face one of the best fighters in your division available to you right now, probably the best. Can you see that that conversation being relit between you and your mate who've had this bickering match for maybe 5 years? Who was the best?
I don't know, potentially. Like, I mean, Ian's obviously done a lot more than me at this point. He's been absolutely smashing it in the UFC. Like, and fair play to him, supporting him all the way. I mean, that's for everyone else to decide. I don't know. I think definitely a win over AJ puts me up there, and like the magnitude of, I guess, Irish MMA bouts and wins. But here, I mean, I don't feel any competition with anybody coming from this island. I feel like, honestly, we're all a team, because we are. And to actually touch on that, you asked me about the magnitude and how much I've been thinking about this. I feel that we need some more wins in Irish MMA, because I'm watching UFC in Paris last week, and I'm comparing that to the Irish scene. I mean, it's not even comparable, and that's sad, because I mean, look at the shows they're doing in Paris every year now, because the fans are absolutely mental. We were known for that. Now, potentially we can bring that back again, the Irish fans, and if there were shows, like for example the UFC being back there, but you look at the amount of French fighters on there as well, you look how they're being built, it kind of made me sad, to be honest. And I feel like maybe a win over AJ here on Saturday can start maybe building that momentum back for all of us, because as I say, I don't compete with other people from this island. I see us as a team. I see like the media and all covered everything. I see like us all kind of rising together, and I hope that maybe, you know, a win on Saturday here does that and continues this momentum again, because Irish MMA has been quiet, like, other than Ian up there, and unfortunately, as much as I like Ian, he just doesn't have the support from this island that I would like him to have. I think everything you're saying there is absolutely accurate. And I actually was speaking to French journalists last week. I was like, we used to be that. Yeah. Like, that was us. Yeah. And yeah, I think there's a grassroots issue here since the death of Joe Carvalho in 2016. There's a lot of things we need to overcome, but you're right. The right win, the right way would do a lot to relight the buzz. For young lads.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
Like, where's Paul Hughes? Who's watching Paul Hughes the way Paul Hughes was watching Conor McGregor? Yeah. Do you think about that?
I'm not, honestly, no.
Does it freak you out when you think about that?
Not really. I mean, I kind of, in a way that I would think about them sort of things, is more so my position in this gym here as the most senior fighter, and the young lads, like, we have the best gym in the island, 100%, Petesy, like 100%. The young lads are the top amateurs in Europe. The starting off pros are unbelievable. So I kind of think about it in a way like I'm showing these lads that it's possible, and that's very important to me, because for me, that was watching Conor McGregor and going, oh my God, it's possible from here. So I think about the young lads coming up here. If they see me do it, then it breaks down the barriers.
Absolutely. I got one final one for you, Paul, and I appreciate the time as always. You've been talking about this out of there about a second round quite a bit. I feel like there's a bit more detail in terms of what way you think you're going to get this done. I was watching you and Shando move around there. I've got a few suspicions as to what way he's thinking might go, but do you want to give us... No. You don't even let me finish the sentence.
Nope. Shut down. Nope.
But before that, that's what we're saying. Are we saying... Well, tell me, round one or round two?
Round two.
Okay.
Round two.
Well, Paul, enjoy your time in Saudi Arabia.
Could be. I mean, here, if it's round one,
no, you said two.
But I'm thinking two.
If you win in round one now, it's a loss as far as I'm concerned.
100%. 100%.
Come here, tell Francis I was asking for him, will you?
100%. I got you, bro.
Nice one, man.
Paul Hughes. He really is taking this week in his stride. Seen him at the press conference.
seeing him in face-offs with AJ. I mean, this is a huge moment for him, and he is so composed. I even saw Dan Hardy kind of referencing this after the press conference on Thursday morning. He was like, Paul Hughes, he's taken to this like a duck to water. It's pretty unbelievable. Speaking about unbelievable, I've been picking my underdog of the week since we started on the audio feed. So I think I have 4 picks in 4 episodes, only 2 of which have come true. One being Merab, one being Juliana. So I've got to pick an underdog this weekend. And I mean, it would be rude not to go with Paul Hughes, right? I believe he is a live dog in this fight. And that's what we're looking for, right? That is the criteria when you're trying to pick an underdog of the week. Don't get me wrong. I know how good AJ McKee is. I have seen AJ McKee fight many times in person. And I think he's one of the most underrated ground fighters in the game. What he did against Darian Caldwell, I mean, one of the best fighters outside of the UFC for a very, very long time. And PFL/Bellator, they know that. And that's why the man has been on great money for many, many years. Every time he is about to test free agency, they lock him up again. And look, he is one of the big names under their banner. So we'll go with Paul Hughes this week. Let's see how we get on. Again, I'm shocked by the Fabian line with Eblin. GC was reading them to me there on Wednesday. And Fabian was going well in that first fight. And now look, you can look at that as a positive thing for Fabian, but you can also look at that as a massive positive for Johnny Eblin, who seems to be able to dig himself out of these situations every time he fights. Well, not every time he fights. Sometimes it's very one-sided. Well, most of the time it is. Against Kasanganay and Fabian, he found a way. And that was absolutely incredible. I'm buzzing for the fight. You're going to have Helwani vision on Saturday. Absolutely buzzing. Maybe something else. Maybe something else as well. I'll tickle your balls on that one for the next couple of days until we figure out what's going on. But there may be something else. Something some people in the comments might be excited about. Who knows? Before I sign off this week, I just want to offer my condolences to everyone at Team KF in Dublin and to the family of Evan Dunn. Evan Dunn was a guy who listened to this show. He was a valued member of the community there in Team KF. He trained there for a long time, but he passed away last Saturday after a 14-month illness. I know how valued Evan was to everyone at Team KF, and we certainly valued him as a listener of the show. My thoughts are with everyone in Evan's family, his friends and family, and of course everyone at Team KF. Anyone who's listened to this show knows how close I am with Chris Fields, the head coach of that gym. Chris was actually the first fighter I ever interviewed back in 2009 or 2010, and he's always been so good to me. He's been a very close friend since then. So very sad to hear about Evan. And again, my thoughts are with his family, my thoughts are with his friends, and my thoughts are with the guys at Team KF. An absolute tragedy. I'm sorry to end on a somber note, but this has been the first video episode of The Craic. Thank you all for listening. I hope you enjoyed Dan. I hope you enjoyed Paul. Thank you to Jordan. Thank you to Oscar. Thank you to Frank. Thank you to Ariel for letting me do the show here. An absolute pleasure. I'll see you next week.